You may fire when ready.
This week, we take a look at the Disney Parks Sandcrawler as heard on episode 71 of our podcast. So the biggest thing that I found when I got it was that the paint app that everybody was worried about, including myself, wasn't as bad in person.
No, and I can tell you just from seeing it on the shelf, it's not as bad as the stills or the publicity photos that were circulating around.
Yeah, like the biggest hang-up was the black paint that they used.
Yeah,
and it's a lot more subtle. I mean, not subtle. It's a lot milder in person. Yeah,
you certainly notice it, but it's not anything that's like it does not take away from the rest of it.
Right. Okay.
Which it looked like in the original photos.
Yeah, well, you know what? Funny enough, looking at this thing as long as I was, the thing I had been comparing it to is the original Trilogy Collection version, which is the one I got in 2004.
Mm-hmm.
My son got. And because that one had a darker brown.
Sure.
And when you think of the Sandcrawler, I mean, really, it's kind of a weird choice to make as a toy because it's basically a dumpster, right? Like it's
right. It's a rolling dumpster.
Yeah. The more I started looking into like other versions, you had the Land of the Jawas playset, which was that cardboard backdrop, and it wasn't quite like that color because that was didn't quite match it. And I thought, like, okay, well, I'm picturing the Sandcrawler as being dark. So you go back and you look, and the radio-controlled version of the Kenner one is a more orangey red, brown, burnt umber. I don't know what you want to call it. But the Sandcrawler itself is more that. It's more of a reddish rust color.
Yeah, rust is the perfect word to explain it.
Yeah. So really, none of the ones we've gotten really, like, they're kind of taking creative licenses with it as far as that goes. Yeah.
Sure.
And when you compare it to the original Trilogy Collection, the first thing you notice is the size difference. It's a decent amount bigger.
Yeah, it's definitely bigger, and I would say the only difference with the two from the side, and granted I've never seen it up and close in person, is that the sections of like the walls, let's say, are more, they're smaller little sections that kind of give a little bit more detail to it.
Yeah.
But it's drastically smaller, the other one that came out. And I really think the bridge or the cockpit section with this one is more illustrated of how high up it is on the actual
Definitely.
Sandcrawler.
Yeah. That's a really good point. Looking at my old one here. Yeah, and part of that is, because the cockpit sort of, it's one of the points, right, of the shape of the thing.
Right.
And on the smaller version, I think, again, because it's the darker paint, it's a little bit tougher to kind of make that out.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it does a really good job of that. Again, I want to keep sounding like I'm complaining about it, but for a deluxe vehicle, one thing that I think would have been nicer would have been bigger treads. The treads from the original Trilogy version and this one are actually the same height.
Okay.
And so that keeps the vehicle scaled down and makes it a little more manageable, right? Just as something, as a physical space. But to me, one of the big iconic things of the Sandcrawler is obviously the sale of droids, and the background of that scene is just treads.
And you can see the drastic size between the droids and even Luke up against those treads.
Right.
Seeing how big that vehicle was. Right.
Yeah. And so even with the new one here, they're like, I've got a display set up and they're pretty much hidden because I've got figures in front of it. So, but I mean, you get the idea. This thing's on treads, so there's that. Okay, so let's kind of go side by side on this thing, starting with the front. We're talking a little bit about the cockpit already. The cool thing on the Sandcrawler, and you really see it on concept art, is it's got the teeth really good on the front, which looks kind of neat. But this thing has a feature that the older version doesn't, and that is it's got a flip-down door at the very front of it.
Yep.
With a cool little winch feature, which we'll talk about.
Cool.
We'll talk about that a little bit later when we go inside. But that door is awesome because that makes it look like that scene in Attack of the Clones. When Anakin's trying to track down where his mother is.
Right. And he's talking to the Jawas. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a really nice way of getting both hands inside of this thing. Because you can kind of put one up through there and then through the side again. The lights
are really cool.
They're amazing. And again, one thing the pictures don't really do justice is how bright the lights are. It's got a set of headlights, and the cockpit lights up, and this is like my favorite thing I think about this thing is the interior of the cockpit, just because of how well lit it is.
Yeah.
And it's just two little bulbs on the sort of the back end of it that lights up the front console, and it also lights up the yellow windows.
Yeah. And you sent me a picture of this, and I thought that the stickers looked very vintage looking, and I thought it was a nice little touch.
Yeah, yeah. Like they're nice. They're scaled nice and small for little Jawa hands. But yeah, they literally look like labels you would have had to, have your mom put on back in the day.
Right.
But it really lights it up, the inside of it really nice. Now that said, that cockpit is like spotless clean. Like
very not what you would expect the Sandcrawler to look like.
No, that's one thing we'll see on the inside of this thing is that I think where it's lacking is the paint app on the inside.
Okay.
And we'll get to that. So to get those lights to work on the Sandcrawler, there's a button on the back of the thing. You press it once, it turns on the headlights. You press it again, it turns on the cockpit. Third time keeps both sets of lights on.
Okay.
And then shuts the whole thing off. And I did find out when I was taking pictures that they will actually shut off
on their own.
Yeah, if you don't touch them for a while. So at least you don't have to worry about burning out batteries and stuff. Okay, so there is an elevator feature, which we've seen on pretty much every other Sandcrawler. The difference is on this one is it's electronic. So that audio, as far as I can tell, that's just the sound of the mechanism that's making it.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. Now this thing has actual movie sounds, which we'll get to that in a bit too. So I think the features is crazy fun to play with, but I think one cool thing is at least if you hit the button, you would have gotten some kind of mechanical engine running kind of thing instead of just you can open the door, you can actually watch this thing raise up inside of the Sandcrawler. And I was talking about the buttons on the back. There's 4 sets of buttons there, and we'll listen to some of the sounds. There's multiple sounds on it. If you press the button more than once, you get a different sound out of them. So the big selling point for me on this, when I finally decided to get it, was that it was just bigger space inside for displaying figures. So on the original trilogy version, the door would come down. Cool thing is it actually turned the door into like a ramp, and there was actually a ladder that came with it. It became a play feature.
Okay.
Whereas on the new one, the door comes down, but it only stops halfway, so it's actually suspended in the air when you open the door.
Okay.
Gets in the way for a display unless you want to turn it into a canopy or something. I guess you could do that. But so I took mine off. Came off really easily. Find a toy ladder somewhere, and you're back in business as far as that goes. And it just but the big thing I like about it is just so much bigger inside.
And is that like a little balcony that's up on top next to the elevator?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, right in the corner. If we go inside, you see on the right there, little shelf. This is the little furnace.
Yeah.
Smelter.
Oh, that's cool. I like that.
And then you pan around. There's basically it's a I don't know. It's apparently that Orabesh writing on there says trash.
Oh, okay.
Not a very useful feature though, because it's not it's open on one side of it.
Right.
So I'm not quite sure. It'd be a cool place to put accessories and stuff, but I'm not sure what the deal is. So So I was saying before about the paint app inside. You see, it's very it's just plain plastic. It's got some detail as far as the mold, but the color it's like a yellowish brown. It makes it brighter inside, but like we're saying about the cockpit, it's just not super authentic. So the next thing up is the hoist that we were talking about earlier. So that pulls out, and it comes with a gonk droid that we'll talk about in a bit. And there's a hole in the top of the gonk droid that you just you stick that hoist on, as advertised, just kind of goes back inside.
Very cool little feature.
Yeah. Hours of fun.
Yeah.
And that hole probably fits, now that I think of it, the same hole that you find on the Disney Parks Droid Factory droid. So you could probably get an astromech on there too, I would think. That's the vehicle itself. So we mentioned that Gonk droid. There's 2 figures that come with the Sandcrawler. You get a Jawa figure that honestly leaves a lot to be desired.
Oh, okay.
It's a cool sculpt, and it's a cool paint app. And actually, the cloak has got like that crosshatch kind of detail to it,
Yeah, you can see it through and through from the video.
Yeah. The only problem is the arms are limited as far as their articulation. Like there's a ball joint shoulder, so you can rotate it, and the wrists rotate.
Okay.
But you can't really do anything useful. Like the arms don't come forward, for example. He can't even point at somebody. It's a weird sculpt, and I don't know, people are saying maybe it's got something to do with Disney's license.
I'm sure it does.
Hasbro,
sure it does.
Yeah. The other figure is a Gonk droid, and like a lot of the Gonk droids we've gotten over the last little while, nice enough sculpt. The legs are nice. The legs don't have any sort of gimmick. They're each articulated separately, so you can actually stand them normal. You don't have to worry about them falling over. They've got foot pegs, so if you want to put them on a stand, but he stands really good. And like the newer ones have, you can pop the top half of the body off.
Ooh,
yeah.
Cool.
So then it shows the sort of the mechanics inside. And oddly enough, nicer detail than what we've seen on Hasbro's, where the detailing inside simpler. Yeah,
sure.
So it's really cool. You basically see the guts, right? You see the motor. Generally speaking, I wish we'd get some Gonk droids with some kind of paint app that just doesn't look like they're made out of a block of wood.
Sure.
But I'd say it's a better figure than the Jawa as far as like just playability.
Okay.
Also, Disney, when are we going to get Gonk droids in your droid factory?
Yeah. Oh boy.
Right? Mix and match, and
there you go.
Cool. Definitely worth. So it's $100 US through the Disney Parks app, or if you're at a Disney park. Someone had asked me on Facebook about it, and you can pretty much ship anything home from a Disney park. So if you see it in the store, grab it, take it over the counter, and say you want to ship it home. And if you're in the U.S., it costs $12 to ship it to Michigan.
There you go.
So super reasonable for a box that's as big as it was. So I like it. The paint app is fine. It's not accurate, but it's not a bad paint app. It's a nice paint app. It's just it's not accurate to the movie, but you know what? That's fine. The thing I like about it, it actually looks nicer on the shelf than the original trilogy version, just because it's a little bit lighter. You can see some detail better that way.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah. And like I said before, the treads could be bigger, maybe not 100% to scale, but they could have made them a little bit bigger, because the treads, I mean, on the set, they only built the treads and part of the Sandcrawler itself, so they didn't. If they scaled this thing up any bigger, it would be a pretty big box that they would be shipping it in. So I'm sure that has
something to do with it. Yeah, absolutely.
We'll let HasLab give us a 1-to-1 scale.
Could you imagine? Could you imagine?
If I had maybe one other complaint, though, and that would be that I wish the roof was either detachable or somewhat detachable.
Okay, so you get at it from the top there?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Because you get your hands inside, and if you wanted to just let more light into it, if it's on the shelf, it would, because, like I said, because of the size of it, you almost don't see the top of it unless you've got a lot of clearance above it. So that would be cool, just to be able to get around in it. But apart from that, it's the largest version of a Sandcrawler that we've ever gotten, and it is bigger than what we've seen before. So I'm glad to have it.